Hi there YouTubers, welcome to North Guitars. We've got a bit of a different video this week. This week we thought that we'd do a little bit on setups of guitars, etc. And we have a particular guitar to do it on this week, and we thought that might be quite helpful. So we've actually got my 1984 Tokai Gold Star Sound, which I believe is a replica of a 1964 Strat. We'll do some pictures of the guitar and everything else. Martin's going to do the setup. He doesn't know anything about it until today, which is a nice bit of joy for you, isn't it? Yeah. So he knew that he was going to do a setup, but not on what guitar. So I'm going to show you the guitar now, and then Martin's going to have a little bit of a chat about the guitar, what he'd like to do to it over the coming weeks to make it as good as it can be. So as I said, this is my 1984 Tokai Gold Star Sound, which are fantastic guitars, absolutely fantastic guitars. Now, at the moment, we have a bridge. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I like a good float on my bridge, normally. However, I'm going to get Martin to deck this one because I want to do the old Hendrixy type stuff. So that's the guitar.
Okay, so yeah, we're just going to have a quick look at the guitar first, just check and see what we need to do to it. At the moment, as Phil said, the bridge is right up there, and we want to deck that, so we want to bring the bridge down so it's sitting on the body. So if Phil detunes it down to E flat to do Hendrixy stuff, it doesn't affect the tuning. We'll do that. We're not going to block this one off. We're just going to deck it, which basically means it's sitting flat on the body. The alternative to doing that, which some people do, is to actually block the trem, which is basically means doing a similar thing, but then we put a block of wood between the back end of the trem and the body, and that stops any movement. But that means that you then can't forward bend the trem as well. Whereas when you deck the trem, you can still use it in the forward action to lower the pitch of the strings, but you can't bring the arm back and raise the pitch. So it limits your trem movement a little bit, but I say it gives you the option of detuning the guitar down to E flat and not having any problems with tuning stability. So that's one thing we're going to do. The other thing we're going to do is just have a look at the general action of the guitar. At the moment, the neck looks pretty straight, and the way we can check that on a guitar is to you hold the first fret, string down, hold the what they call the body fret, which is basically roughly where the neck and the body join. This bit between there and there is the bending section. So if we go about halfway, which is usually around the 7th fret, at the moment you can see there really isn't any movement there. It's actually sitting on the middle fret. Ideally, to get a consistent action on it, we would like a little bit of bounce there, a little bit of movement, not too much. So what we're going to do is, once we've restrung the guitar, we'll have a look at the setup on the neck. It looks like this one's got 9s on at the moment, and we're actually going to put a set of 10 to 46s on. Other makes are available, obviously. So once we do that, we may find that'll put some relief into the neck anyway. But if not, we'll have a look at adjusting the truss rod. What we'll probably do is we'll probably pop the neck off anyway and show you how the truss rod's adjusted on this one.
What do you think about the general condition of the guitar? Is there
yeah,
anything that you'd want to change over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean it looks pretty much okay. I mean there doesn't seem to be too much wear on it and stuff. There are a few slight nicks in the first 2 or 3 frets there, so somebody's obviously been playing it quite a lot up at this end. It's not really evident further down. So what we'll probably do, not on this video, but on a later one, we'll have a look at doing a fret dress on here, just to clean those frets up. But what we'll do today, we'll probably just give them a general polish. Again, as I said, we'll look at the action, check the electrics are all right, and adjust the heights of the pickups, make sure they're all at the right height. Another thing you sometimes get issues with are the screws on the saddles. They can sometimes, if they've been in a long time, somebody's been resting the hand on there, the sweat from your hand gets in there, and sometimes these corrode and they bind a little bit. So what we'll do when we get the strings off, we'll give these a little squirt of WD-40 on the moving parts here, just to make sure they're free. So when we start adjusting the action, it's not going to give us any problems. And that's about it, really. So yeah, we'll get cracking.
Excellent. So what are we doing now then, Martin?
We're just putting a little bit of WD-40 on the adjustable screws on the saddles. We'll put a little bit of squirt on the screws at this end as well, just to make sure everything's running nicely. Oh, squirts everywhere.
We do get excited when we do guitar stuff.
Yeah, and we'll just let that soak in a little bit while we do the look at the springs on the back.
So yeah, so at the moment the guitar's got 3 springs on, and normally when you deck a guitar, quite often something that you'll actually do, or people actually do, is make sure that the guitar's got 4 or 5 springs on the back, won't they, just for stability, really.
Yeah.
So this has obviously got 3 on there at the moment, which have been there since the guitar was made, by the looks of it. So we're going to add 2 new ones.
Yeah, there's a couple of alternative ways. Sometimes people just screw these screws in as far as they can, and that increases the tension on the springs.
Yeah.
But it can also put a lot of sort of stress on this part of the guitar here, and particularly on sort of cheaper guitars. Sometimes the wood here is not very thick, and you can end up sort of cracking bits and stuff if you put too much pressure on there, or you can pull the screws out. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put a couple of springs on. New springs on there. We'll just, before we do that, the adjuster here is on a slight angle, so I'm just going to straighten that up first, just so that we've got that even to start with. And what we'll do, we'll put the 5 springs on. When we get it strung up and up to pitch, we'll see where we are, whether we need to adjust this or not. So yeah, we'll just drop the new springs in. These are slightly smaller than the ones that are on there. There we go. So we've got the 5 in there, so that should keep it nice and firm down against the body there.
Excellent.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is just give the fingerboard a little bit of a clean. It's not too bad. It's got a little bit of grime on there, and the frets could do with a little bit of buffing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some, this is quadruple 0 grade wire wool, and what I'm going to do is just rub that on. It's very fine, so it's not going to damage the fingerboard, and that will just get rid of any grime on there and give the frets a little bit of a polish at the same time. Let's say later on another video we're going to do a bit of fret dress on here, and we'll give the frets a good polish up then. But this is just to tidy them up a little bit. Okay, so we've got the bottom 3 strings on. I'm going to put the 3rd string on the G string. Obviously with this, just wanted to explain this because these other ones follow the same principle as the first one, so you measure 2.5. Obviously when you get to this one, you've got 2 and then you run out. You can guess that one. It's not critical anyway, so a little bit more on this 3rd doesn't harm anyway. So we'll trim that one off there. Pop this in. I'll use a string winder this time, which will be a little bit quicker. Put a couple of winds around there. As I say, if you put your finger on there as you're winding it on, you'll ensure that it winds on at the bottom. And then if Phil sticks the camera around here and looks at the side, you'll see that you've got a reasonable angle here. Not as much as the other ones, but if it was coming off the top there, you'd probably have a string angle, sort of something like that. So you'd lose some downward pressure over the nut. So that's why we're doing that. And these last ones, again, in terms of measuring them, if you take it to the post you want, put it on there, and then you can measure your 2.5 from that point and snip them off. So these last two have got the string tree, so it's not as critical with these that you get the angle on there, because the string tree will do that for you. So again, we'll just
the same technique,
measure that one, and then give it 2.5-ish. Some people say 2, but I like to do 2.5 just for a little bit of extra.
So once you've stretched the strings and everything else, then that extra half's going to be irrelevant, really, isn't it? So.
Yeah. Right, so we've got all the strings on there, all nice and neat on the headstock end. No bits of string sticking out, which is what we want. And what we'll do now is we'll get the thing tuned up roughly. We probably won't do this on the video because it might take a little time just to get that tuned up, but we'll get it tuned up, and then we'll just explain a little bit about string stretching when we've got the strings roughly to tune. Okay, so we've got our strings on. We've got them nicely set up on the headstock there on the tuners, and we've basically got them tuned roughly to pitch. So what we're going to do now, before you start doing any setup work, what you really want to do is make sure your strings are stretched. If you don't do that, what you'll find is you'll adjust something and then it'll go out, and also when you start playing, every time you do something you'll have to retune. So the best way I find to do it is to basically play your 5th fret on your E string, and then your open A string, and then what I'll then do is I'll keep holding it down on there, and I'll stretch that string, just pull it up a little bit, 2 or 3 times, and you can see how far that's gone out now. So what I'll do then using the tuner is I'll tune that back up to E, and do that a few times until it stops going out of tune when I stretch it. Just about there now. Yeah, we've got a bit of buzz on there because the saddles need adjusting yet, so don't worry about that too much. We're going to sort that out shortly. So that one's, the bottom E is about in there, so we'll do the same with the next one. Usually about 3 times or something with your wound strings. Sometimes the unwound strings you might have to stretch them a little bit more. Okay, so we've got them all stretched now, roughly in tune, and just be a little bit careful when you're stretching your thinner strings, particularly if you're using 8s or 9s. If you try and stretch them too much, they can snap, so just be a little bit gentle with those. So now we've got it roughly in tune, and if we just have a little look at the neck now, if you remember we took about 1/4 of a turn off the neck of the truss rod, and if we do the little test with the string, you'll now see there's a little bit of bounce there in the middle. See that string moving up and down? Now it was sat straight on the fret before, so we've created a little bit of relief in the neck. So hopefully that's going to be enough. What we'll do now is we'll get the saddle set, because obviously we've brought the trem down, which is now, as you can see, is now sitting on the body. So if we'd have tuned it up and the trem was still lifting, we'd have had to tighten the claw up on the back here a little bit to put a bit more tension on the block. But that looks absolutely fine sitting on there, so it's nice and solid. So yeah, so we just need to adjust the height now. Now obviously, because we've brought that down, we've brought the strings down, which is why we were getting that. Why we were getting that buzz. So what we're going to do now is take the strings up a little bit to get the action roughly how we want, and then we'll set that, and then what we'll probably do is let Phil have a play and see what he thinks. The process in terms of setting it up is generally you would do any adjustments to the truss rod, and then you'd adjust the height of your saddles, and then the last thing you would do is look at the intonation. Not worth doing anything with the intonation until you've sorted the other things out, because everything affects the intonation. Your string height, your truss rod in the neck, your relief in the neck. So there's no point doing anything to your intonation. If you're not sure what intonation is, intonation basically allows you to make sure that your open note is an E and your 12th fretted note is a perfect E as well. If your intonation's not right here, you'll find you get the 12th fret and it's slightly out. And if you're playing a couple of notes at a time or certain chords, you'll hear that it's discordant. So we'll have a look at that shortly. But what we'll do is we'll just have a go at adjusting the string height first. So the bottom E string looks like it's come down a bit from where it was before. So what we'll do is just select the right Allen key. And there are a couple of different sizes. There are some thinner ones which you find on some saddles, which is this one here, but that's actually too small for that one. So there's another slightly larger. I'm not sure off the top of my head what actual dimensions these are. So we need this one here. So what we're going to do is just raise this up a little bit. And that's all moving okay. As I say, you can find these that they get a bit rusted up when people put the palm on there, but they seem to be moving okay. So what I generally do is set the bottom E and then gauge the rest from that. There's all sorts of gauges you can get for curvature and things like that, but I've always done it more or less by eye. So the way to check is when you set your string heights, your string should roughly follow the curvature of your fingerboard. So if you look from the side and you can't see the next string, it means that one's too low. So if I pull that one down, and you can see the one behind it, but at the moment you can't see that. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise the A string up slightly so we can just see it from the side. And then we do the similar process for the other strings to the middle. Okay, so I've adjusted these to get the curvature to match the neck, and what I'm going to do is just run down the strings and just check that we haven't got any problem frets or that we're not generally too low. But
apologies for the background noise. Our workshop is on a working farm.
Okay, so we've got the strings on, we've got the string height set, and what we're now going to do is have a look at the intonation. As I said before, that's basically to ensure that all our notes are correct as we go down the fingerboard. So what you want to do when you do the intonation, there are lots of videos on YouTube, and quite often you'll see people and they'll actually be doing the intonation with a guitar flat on the bench. It's best to do it in the playing position, basically because strings do sort of sag in a different way when it's like that to when it's upright. So as you're going to be playing the guitar upright, then it's best to set your intonation like that, unless you're Jeff Healey, who used to play it on his knee flat. So So basically what we're going to do is we're going to check each string and adjust the intonation, and that is done by moving the bridge saddles backwards and forwards using these screws here, and we've got some springs on there which just push the saddles forward when we loosen them off. So what we'll do is we'll take each string at a time and we'll put it in the tuner, and we'll put the light on.
Probably need to plug it in.
Oh yeah, good idea. We'll plug it in as well. And we'll just make sure everything's turned up on the guitar. So what I'm going to do is play the open note and just make sure that our open E is an open E. Yeah, so we're on there with the tuner. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to play the 12th fretted note, which should also be an E. Don't press it too hard though, I'll show you in a second on the tuner. So if we see that E now, it's flat. So that's your open note. Oh, it's not. That was me. No, it is. It is a little bit flat. So if you press that note hard like that, you can actually change the pitch quite a bit of the string. So just press it onto the fret, but not too hard. So we're slightly flat there. Now with a tuner that has a needle on, it's easier to see. If the needle is pointing towards this way, the saddle has to go that way, and if it's pointing backwards, the saddle has to go backwards. Similarly with lights, you'll find there's probably a green light in the middle and red lights either side. So use the lights. So if it's to the left hand side, you need to move it forward, and if it's to the right hand side, you need to move it back. So what we're going to do is, we're a little bit flat, so this saddle, bottom E saddle, has to go forward slightly. So we'll unscrew that a bit, and sometimes you have to give it a little push just to get it moving. And then because we moved that forward, we need to retune the open note back up to an E. When you're tuning as well, just as a general thing, always tune up to a note, because there's a bit of backlash on tuners. So if you try and tune down, it'll sometimes go further than you want. So it's best to go, if you need to tune up, then it's best to go up. If you have to go down, go further down than you need to and come back up to the note. So we're back up to an open E there. And then if we play the still not quite, still needs a bit more. Nope, light's gone off. Okay, so we've got that bottom E sorted. That's now intonating properly on the 12th fret. And we repeat the process. We'll just check the next string. And that one's okay. So what we'll do is we'll just check the others rather than watching every string. We'll check the others, make sure we're okay, and then come back to you when the strings are all intonated. Okay, just finally, just to have a look at pickup height. We just need to adjust these to try and get each pickup a similar distance from the strings. So what we'll do is we just use the screws on the end and adjust the pickups. As you can see, this one was down compared to the others. What you need to do is do that approximately. You want approximately 2 to 3 millimeters between the magnets and the strings on the pickups. but what you may find when you plug the guitar in, you might have to alter them a little bit to get the balance right on the pickups. So it's not a hard and fast rule, so just play about with it and get it till it sounds right.
Okay, so let's have a quick talk about this. So I've had this home now for a few days, Martin. So when we were in the workshop, we checked the electrics and everything. When we gave it a really good setup, and we made sure that all the saddles were the right height, etc. And Martin's done a sterling job on this. And as I've mentioned before, I'm a really big fan of old Japanese tokais. But what I've found since I've got this home is I found that it's gone from a good guitar into just a great guitar now. It's really articulate, bright, clean, really touch sensitive actually. Now these are just standard pickups, so I don't even, to be honest, I don't even know what pickups they've got in these. But they're so touch sensitive and not overbearing, like a ceramic magnet pickup, for example. So I'm assuming they're Alnico, but I might be wrong. But yeah, so after this now, I'm just gonna play a little bit just so you get a bit of a general idea. So as with all the demos that we're doing at the moment, until we find a better way of doing it, we're just running through a Spark amp. I've got a little bit of reverb on there, and I'm using a Dodd Looking Glass as like a clean boost. But that's it. That's all that's on there. So yeah, hopefully just a little bit of playing will just give you an idea how it sounds. I'll see you next time.